Did you know that 89% of award-winning ad campaigns fall into just 6 categories of thinking? And now the ad nerds at Ad House Advertising School have taken that thinking and turned it into a deck of cards. Ad House of Cards is a deck of 35 cards designed to help you come up with big ideas. Each card includes a prompt, a proven technique used by award-winning ad pros to jumpstart your thinking and improve your campaigns. Visual thinkers can use the backs of the cards to free associate using gorgeous photography from the artists at Unsplash.com. Ad House of Cards will teach you to hone in on the benefit, dramatize it, romanticize it, look at it sideways, and twist it into a pretzel. And the best part is that all of the proceeds go to the Ad House Scholarship Program, supporting our mission to make the advertising industry more inclusive. Ad House of Cards, a deck for ad nerds. Get yours today for just $20 at adhousenyc.com.
Welcome to the A-List.
Hello, fellow ad nerds, and welcome to the A-List, the podcast that asks the world's top advertising professionals how they got started in the business. I'm your host, Tom Christmann. I make ads at VaynerMedia, and I'm also co-dean at Ad House Advertising School. Today, I'm sharing my conversation with Jason Bagley. Jason is a freelance creative who spent 16 years working at Wieden Kennedy, and we talk about his how he got in there and his whole rise there. And now he is a freelance creative, and he runs the Audacious School of Astonishing Pursuits, where he does an 8-week coaching course called Creative Megamachine. I love that name. Which teaches things like how to find your voice, how to take your ideas to the edge of madness, and more. I want to take that class. This is a great episode full of awesome advice. We talk about how to push past those first 10 ideas. We talk about how to get your dream job. We talk about it all. And I think you're going to like it. So now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Jason Bagley. Hey, Jason Bagley.
Hey, man.
Oh, you got your own microphone too.
I'm not to be outdone by Tom. I have my own.
That's awesome. So tell me, I noticed that I know a lot of people stay at Wieden for a long time, but you were there a long time. And just what just happened? David Kennedy passed just a couple days ago, or was it yesterday?
A couple days ago, yeah.
Days are going like crazy. So we lost Cliff Freeman, and now we've lost David Kennedy. Yeah. So you knew him.
I did. Yeah, he was. He actually retired before I started, which was, 17 years ago or something. He had already retired, but thankfully for me and everybody else, he came into the office every day. The whole time I was there. In fact, when I first started, my office, when I was a junior copywriter, was his office was right behind mine. He had this kind of corner open space, which was just like a hoarder's nest of amazing art and advertising memorabilia and just like everything just piled in there. And I posted this on Instagram, but in the Wieden Kennedy like new hire book, there's a line in there that says "Be nice to the janitor," and it doesn't explain it. And what it means is that old guy shuffling around with 50 keys jangling on his belt, that you think is the janitor, is actually David Kennedy.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And you would never know. He was the most unassuming, just humble, sweet man that you didn't realize was this absolute legend that changed the industry. But yeah just a giant heart and the sweetest, kindest, most selfless person that you could ever hope to meet, which is which is rare in an icon to be that wonderful. So he will be missed.
Yeah, he certainly will. I never got to meet him, but from all the stories that I've seen, he was something special. And wow, that's funny that you had an office right next to him. That must have been so cool. So tell us let's go back to where you started, where you grew up. Like what was that like?
Yeah, so I grew up in Arizona, Mesa, Arizona, about 15 minutes from Arizona State University, and grew up in a blue collar home. My dad was a house painter, and so I grew up from a probably illegal child labor age, spending every summer working with my dad painting houses in 118-degree weather. It was really fun. That's where I became inspired to not go into painting houses.
Yeah.
When I was out. I mean, I hated it. We would wake up. You can imagine the worst nightmare for a teenager. We would wake up at 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. to try to beat some of the heat.
Yeah.
And I was like a social kid. So I was out till midnight every night, at least with my friends. And then I would wake up my dad would come wake me up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. It was a nightmare. My brother and I, a couple of times, actually took sleeping bags and like tried to hide in the corner of the yard and slept outside just so that we wouldn't be in our beds when our dad came to wake us up. Didn't work. He found us. But so I grew up in this, was kind of surrounded by a lot of blue collar environment. The idea of making money or having a career doing something creative just absolutely never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a part of my world. And so, although looking back, I was always kind of doing what I do now. From
how so?
Well, I mean, I can go back to some of my earliest memories. I grew up around a lot of cousins and stuff in Arizona, and I was really close with my cousin Melissa. And from when we were very small, I remember we would make like satirical kind of spoof soap operas on audio cassette decks. You remember the little tape decks that just had a record and play button?
Yeah.
We would just do audio. It was like a radio theater of just making fun of these spoof kind of soap operas. And that was like, I mean, we couldn't have been 6 years old.
Wow.
At that 6 or 7 years old. And then when camcorders came around, my friends and I would make, kind of SNL style skits and different things. And I was also writing all the time. I kept journals, and I have a chest full of journals, like probably 40 journals, and they're probably all stupid and ridiculous and filled with horrible writing.
Yeah.
But it was just something that I liked to do. And that's something I always ask when a young person comes and they're like, I want to be a creative in advertising, and maybe they haven't picked their career or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The first question I ask them is, have you always written? Do you love writing? Like, is writing just something you just did? Nobody made you do it, but you just love doing it. And they're like, well, no, or they either say yes or no.
Right.
And then I say, do you love doodling? Do you love drawing? Have you always loved like painting and doodling and making art of some sort? And if they answer no to both of those questions, they probably just like the idea of being a creative. They probably wouldn't actually enjoy it. But a lot of times, if they answer yes, I'm like, well, you probably love this job.
Yeah.
I've rarely ever met a great creative that kind of hadn't done it in one form or another their whole life. In some way, they either were writing or creating art or making videos or something like that. But
yeah,
So yeah, that was me. And again, the whole time, never thought, even though I was constantly making this content, just never occurred to me that this would be a career at all.
Were you listening to people that were making stuff like that? Weird Al Yankovic, all those kind of things, or
I don't remember. I don't think, I mean, fairly early on, not as early as those soap opera spoofs, but fairly early on, I was a huge SNL fan. So
right.
that definitely influenced like all the videos and different skits and stuff that I did later.
Yeah.
But I don't know what, I always just loved comedy. I just loved like making fun of stuff. And I didn't realize till later, I did horribly in school. Barely found out just a few hours before my high school graduation ceremony that I was even graduating with my class, because that was very much in question.
Right.
And just kind of struggled in school. And I realized much later that I had a pretty severe ADD, but not the cool kind of ADD where you like breakdance on top of the desks and kiss the teacher and you do cool stuff that's very charismatic and exciting, like in the movies.
Yeah.
I had the kind where if my brain is bored, I just hit the desk. I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
And so I literally was asleep on my desk probably 50% of my education. And what I realized looking back now, I got kicked out of class a lot because I would, to stimulate my brain, I would goof off and my friends and I would make each other laugh. And I realize now I was just trying to stay awake, but that's kind of, so I got kicked out of class a lot, and I wasn't a bad kid. I loved to laugh, and that was kind of the way I could function. And I don't remember where I was going with that, but that I think that developed, sort of created the foundation of my love of comedy, and just not just comedy, but kind of pushing things to, I had to sort of push things to the extreme to stay awake.
Right. To stimulate your brain.
Yeah. My brain is not easily stimulated. It's not stimulated by like sort of base level, sort of mild drama or comedy. Like I want things to go to the extreme.
Yes.
It kind of doesn't register in my brain unless it does. And I can see now that I'm an old man looking back how that kind of was formative in my career and what I was drawn to later.
Yeah. So you didn't know if you were going to graduate from high school until like the day of. What were your plans for college? What were did you have some colleges that you wanted to go to and you were like, if I can get out of here? Or were you like, I'll just go to junior college? Like, where did you end up going?
Well, I knew I was going to go do a service mission for my church. And so I didn't even bother. This tells you what an amazing student I was. I didn't even bother taking the ACT or the SAT. I was just like, I can't, that's going to be a nightmare. So I didn't take that. And I lived in Japan for 2 years. I did my service mission there, and that was amazing. And that kind of helped me grow up, I think. And I got more disciplined, and I sort of learned how to study, and I had to learn the Japanese language. And I was a very different person when I came home from that in terms of like discipline and ability to kind of focus a little bit more. But because I hadn't taken the tests, I either had to take the tests, which now I'm like 3 years out. I would have done horribly. I think I would have done horribly if I took it immediately after high school.
Yeah.
But, so I did 2 years of junior college in order to get into BYU. Yeah. And even then, the way I got into BYU is you had to write an essay. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't really have all the special extracurricular activities that get you into a pretty competitive school. And my grades were pretty good because I had done well when I got home, but I knew it was kind of probably going to ride on this essay. And so I just wrote the funniest essay that I could, just the most ridiculous, funny essay. And I wish I had a copy of it. I don't, but I'm pretty sure that's what got me in.
Oh, wow. Maybe you can get it from BYU. Maybe they have it in the files.
I should totally see. I mean, that would be a lot of essays that they're saving if they do. But so I got in, and at that time, they really did not have, they have an amazing program now. I wish I could say
advertising.
Yeah. I wish I could say that they had an amazing creative program at that time. I didn't even know I was going to go into advertising, but they really eventually, like years later, it took me a long time to graduate from college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just couldn't figure. Everything sounded horrible. Everything sounded like, again, going back to my ADD, I just couldn't imagine being focused on anything. So I ended up taking just the elective classes that I naturally took were all like theater and film, photography, creative writing. And eventually I was like, I have to pick a major. I was like 4 years in and I hadn't even picked a major.
Yeah.
And so I heard about this test that's like a career placement test you can take. And I went, you take the test and then you meet with a counselor like a couple weeks later and they go over the results. And so I took the test, and a couple weeks later, the counselor calls me in and he says, I've been giving this test for more than a decade. And when you take the test, it kind of spits out three to five potential careers. Like, this is the only time that it has ever given me only one career option. And it says that you need to go into the creative department of an advertising agency. And so I was like,
the computer told you what to do.
Yeah, the computer selected my career. And I was like, hey, that actually sounds kind of fun. And
did you know what that was? Like a creative department of an ad agency?
I kind of knew what that was at that point because I had an older cousin, Jeff Bagley. He was more like an uncle, but he's technically my first cousin. That was he was a CCO of an ad agency there in Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of had an idea of what that was. And when I got those results, I delved into it even more, and I was like, this actually does sound kind of fun. I think I might enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any better ideas, so I just did it. But like I said, once I made that decision, they didn't really have a great program. They had one copywriting class that was at night. That was literally their entire creative program. Everything else was like strategy and media and a lot of other things. Now they have, I think, one of the best programs in the country that a lot of good agencies are recruiting out of. But and that's, so they're doing great. They did not have that when I was there. So I graduated with like not an amazing portfolio. I basically had to sort of put it together myself. It wasn't great. And just went on up to Salt Lake City because that's where I was, going to school in Provo, Utah. And with my button up and my tie, and did the interviews and got a job at a small agency there. And then just a couple months later, got a job working for my cousin at the bigger agency, which no longer exists.
Right.
And that they were specializing in like tech at that time. This was before the .com bust.
Right.
And so I was working on like print ads in business to business engineering publications for like writing ads for oscilloscopes and SCSI host adapter cards and enterprise storage solutions. Real sexy stuff.
Yeah, but stuff you have to learn about. Like the great thing about something like that, like I started in direct response at Ogilvy Direct, when it was called Ogilvy Direct. And I had to learn about AT&T call cards for the military. I had to learn about the Glenlivet Scotch, like things that I had no interest in and no knowledge of. And I think that helped me become a better copywriter. Like when you have to learn about all those crazy things that you just mentioned, it sort of forces you to do the work that maybe you hadn't done in because I was the same way in high school. Like I took art. I just didn't even try to do the hard stuff.
Totally. And that I learned grammar and all really. I had grown up writing, but just free writing in a journal. I didn't really know grammar. I didn't know anything. I kind of learned all that on the job.
Yeah.
And the other thing it does when you start out at a place like Ogilvy Direct or the place I started is I think it's a great blessing. I almost feel that it's a curse to come straight out of school to a place like Wieden Kennedy because you don't fully appreciate what you have. And I was there for 16 years. And on the last day, I still appreciated because of the way the first 3 years of my career, it never was lost on me what an amazing place that I worked at and how incredible it was. And compared to the majority of the industry, like what amazing clients and brands I got to work on and the amazing people I got to work with. And there are many great brands and great, amazing people throughout the industry. That's what's great about it. But I would see people that came straight from school to Wieden, and often they just didn't have the perspective of, they weren't able to appreciate it as much as somebody who had experienced, the other.
Right. How did you so you're at your cousin's ad agency, and at that point you're thinking, okay, this is my career. This is what I'm going to be doing. Did you want to get out of Utah? Did you want to? Was it a drive to sort of get into sort of one of the bigger agencies at that point? What was your list?
Yeah, so because of my late start, I didn't know that much about the industry. So it was really my first year on the job that I got access to like award show annuals and the DVDs that were in the award show annuals.
Yeah.
And I was kind of exposed to the best work being done. And as soon as I saw that, it was just like pure magic to me. It was so different from what I was doing. And it was so like, just, I say that it was like a magic trick because I was blown away by it. And I could not figure out how they made work like that.
Yeah.
Because that just wasn't what I was experiencing. But I knew that somehow I wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's really when I became aware of places like Wieden. And at that time, there was a lot of agencies that were doing incredible work. And it was kind of before, I don't know, the industry's changed a lot and there's still a lot of great work being done. But there was, you could name off 10 agencies that that you would kill to work at. And so I became aware of those agencies and I was like, I've got to get into one of those places. And so I quickly realized I'm not going to get into one of those places producing the work that I'm making at the agency I was working at. And so I started kind of building a spec portfolio on nights and weekends of just fake ads to try to get into one of those places.
And by yourself, you just sort of took it on yourself to sort of just make ads, or did you have like a crew of young people that
I had another cousin named Tyler McKellar who was sort of he and I had that same goal. And so we would work together on some stuff and then we would like rope in, we were both writers. So we would, get an art director to lay something out for us. But we we kind of concepted ideas that if it was film concepted, we put ourselves in the box of like, what can we shoot on a crappy camcorder by ourselves?
Yeah.
and and just embraced sort of the idea, the concept, and didn't worry about the fact that it was going to look like crap. And I personally don't have a problem with that. Like if Jeff Kling has a famous portfolio that he got hired at Wieden with, that is a bunch of yellow legal pad papers, just like sheets of paper that have in Sharpie headlines and like crude pictures. And I actually got to see it when I went to Wieden.
Oh, you did?
When I went up there to interview, they actually showed me. That's another crazy story. Which I guess this is the right place to tell that story. But so yeah, I was working on my portfolio, and I really at that time, the whole world of great creative was a total mystery to me. I hadn't gone to a fancy portfolio school or anything.
Yeah.
And so I was just dying to somehow talk to somebody at one of those agencies and have them like reveal a few of their secrets. And excuse me. And about 2 years into my having a job, Jed Alger and Tim Hanrahan, who were CDs at Wieden, came to Salt Lake to speak at like an ad club lunch. And I heard about this, and I was like a month in advance. I was like, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to be at that lunch, and I'm going to be super annoying, and I'm going to just badger them with questions. And so they came and they spoke. And afterwards, I like beelined it over to them, and literally they were kind enough. I asked them questions for like an hour straight, and just like poking them for anything that I could get. And then afterwards, Tim was kind enough to give me his email address. And I said, if I send you my portfolio, would you mind giving me feedback? And at this time, I wasn't like, getting a job at Wieden Kennedy wasn't even really why I was talking to him, because I didn't even think that was a possibility. I was just wanting to learn from him and get feedback from him. And so I sent him my portfolio. He basically said it's crap, in a nice way, because
which is great.
Nice man. And so I scrapped it and started over. And every 3 months or so, I was working really hard on it. I was working like every night, weekends. Every 3 months or so, I would send him my book, and he would give me feedback. And it got to a point where it was pretty solid. And I sent it to him, and he said like, this is a solid book. He's like, you could go and get a job at a decent place. He said Boston, because I think he's from Boston. He's like, you can get a good workman-like job in Boston with this. But he said, I don't see a voice coming through. I don't see you coming through in this portfolio. It looks like a solid portfolio that anybody with a moderate amount of talent could do. He said, I want to see you. I want to see your creative voice. I want to see a unique point of view. And that just sent me into a tailspin of confusion, because I was like, what is my voice? I don't know what that is. What's my creative voice? And so I thought about that for a long time, and I went through trying to figure that out. I sort of went through all the award show annuals, and I started marking the stuff that I loved the most, that just like, it was all great, but the stuff that really resonated with me the most. And then after I had like literally put Post-its on all that, then I went through it again, and I said, of the stuff I love, what do I think could possibly have ever come from me, like from my sensibility? And then I marked just those. and there was a definite pattern of like, it was a world of, it was kind of like Miller High Life, the stuff that the Swedes at Fallon were doing at that time. Definitely there was a slant toward comedy and kind of weird, quirky stuff. And that was like, I think this is the type of work I would love to do, and that I think I could possibly someday do.
Yeah.
And that's the way I started to sort of zero in on what my creative voice was. And what I did is I kind of set that work as my new standard. So when I would come up with spec work, I would judge it against, is it in that universe, not copying that work, but does it resonate with me in the same way that work does?
Right.
And so I threw out my whole portfolio, started over again with that new standard. And when after like 6 months or something, I kind of had a portfolio of new work, and I sent it to Tim again. And what I didn't know, and again, I'm just looking for feedback. I'm not thinking I'm going to get a job at Wieden.
Yeah.
That was just like almost impossible.
Right.
What I didn't know is that Tim had been out on production for 6 weeks and was coming in for 1 hour into the office to get his mail and go to one meeting. And when he got in there, my physical portfolio was on his desk. And luckily he looked at it, put the DVD in, watched the spots, and was like, wow, I like this. And on his way to the meeting, he took the portfolio over going to take it to the recruiter. And he ran into her as she was getting on the elevator with a pile of portfolios. And he said, hey, I got a good book you should look at. And she didn't even have a free hand. She said, throw it on top of the pile. I'm going up to Dan's office right now. And put it on there, went up to Dan. Jeff Kling had just left, and they were looking for a writer to replace Kling that was a kind of comedy in that realm. Dan looked at the books and said, I want to hire this guy.
Wow.
And so if Tim had not come in, if it had been 30 seconds later and missed the recruiter getting on the elevator, who knows where my career would be. And the fact that like so many things about that story are crazy, because Kling was like literally one of my, as far as copywriters, he was one of my heroes. Like the High Life campaign was one of those campaigns I just worshiped. And so
it's still some of the best copywriting around in a television spot. For voice, for weirdness, for getting to the heart of everybody should watch it. It's the, what is it called? That's the High Life or something like that. It's the campaign is called something. I forget, but maybe I'll put a link to
High
it.
Life. Yeah. I always tell like young people that maybe haven't seen it, I'm like, go watch all 98 of, or however many there are. They're amazing, but it was just incredible that the fact that I was being hired to kind of replace one of my heroes. The timing of it and everything. But
and the other part that I love is that, you know, when you met this, first of all, you made sure that you were at that meeting. You knew what you wanted, which is like, you know, I think 60% of life is just knowing, oh, I want that. And then figuring out, knowing that I want that, knowing that these people are going to be in Salt Lake City, and I'm going to be at that lunch a month from now, making that a priority, having questions, going up to them. You were brave. And then when they gave you their email, you didn't just go, I didn't get the job. I don't know. They're just like, I thought maybe they'd, you sent them stuff. And then when they said your book was shit, you kept sending them stuff. So the perseverance is remarkable and amazing. And that's how it happens. Right. And the luck is part of it too, but the luck wouldn't be there if you hadn't done all the rest of the preparedness stuff.
I think so much I mean, as you know, so much success, so much of success in this industry is just endurance and perseverance, and who can outlast, who's more annoying and curious and determined than the next person, because it's sort of a war of attrition in terms of, 95% of all the ideas that we come up with and present are going to die. And so who can just keep coming back? Who's got the endurance? And I just posted on Instagram a little video of how blessed are the moderately talented, and about how excessive talent, in my experience, excessive talent is actually more of a curse than a blessing.
Yeah.
Because people that are naturally just insanely talented, which I definitely do not consider myself one of those, I think a good ideas they just sort of fall out of their head and out of their mouth so easily and naturally, and have probably their whole life, that they never develop the discipline and the endurance to go past those good ideas to great ideas.
Yeah.
So when they sit down to concept, these are the people that are like the funniest person in the room, and they're the quick-witted. And when they sit down the concept, they're just like, well, there's a good idea. Look, I came up with 5 good ideas in 10 minutes. And they can't quite push themselves past that, where it's like, no, you don't need to come up with 10 ideas. You need to come up with 400 ideas.
Yeah.
That's where the great one is going to be somewhere in the 400 or however many. So in my experience, some of the most raw talented people that I've worked with most of them did not end up becoming the most successful. It was more the people that just had sort of the perseverance, like you said, just keep going and going and going. And those are the ones that get there.
So your book got seen by Dan. He said, let's hire this guy. You didn't know that was going to happen. You just thought this was another, like, I'm just sending it, but you sent him a physical book. You didn't I guess email books weren't a thing. You didn't have a website back then. I didn't have a website back then. So you sent him a physical book. He sends it. How did you get a call? What happened? What happened next?
The recruiter left a voicemail on my answering machine. And that was back in the day where we had physical answering machines. And they said, hey, her name was Beth. She was actually a freelance. She was filling in for Melanie. But she's like, hey, Dan, this is Beth from Wieden Kennedy. Dan Wieden just saw your book and he wants to fly you up. I was just like totally blown away. And Wieden had been, that had been my sort of dream agency, but it was just seemed so outside of the realm of possibility. And when I say it was my dream agency, I carried around a little piece of foam core where I sort of wrote down my kind of moonshot career goals.
Yeah.
And I would read this thing every day.
What were they?
Well, one of them was I had to like get myself in the mental state every day to like, keep going and keep persevering, because I was working on these oscilloscope print ads.
Yeah.
And so to get myself to believe it was possible, I wrote these things down. And one of the things I wrote was, they were all in the present tense. And one of the things I wrote was, I work in a 100 square foot satellite office of Wieden Kennedy. And I read this thing for like 2 years, and then it became true.
What satellite office were you in?
I was just in my agency in Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay.
That was just what I told myself.
Yeah.
That I already worked at Wieden.
Yeah.
And that I would try to behave as if I did. I would try to like hold myself to the standard of somebody that worked at Wieden Kennedy, or at least what I imagine the standard to be. And I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in that. In my coaching program, the very first week is create your mega dream, and I kind of walk them through the process of like how to really articulate a vision for their career that's going to be super inspiring, that will like emotionally not only get your brain to believe what's possible, but also just give you the drive and the confidence on a daily basis.
Yeah.
To keep going and to be excited about this amazing career that we get to be involved in.
That's great. That's great advice. And the writing down in the present tense is something everyone should do. And it because it forces you to figure out what you want, and then you write that down, and your brain doesn't know that it's not true. Your brain is really dumb and wants to just everything it reads. That's why this misinformation stuff on Facebook and all that is so bad for humanity, because we believe everything we read, and everyone does. And so if you can write something to yourself that tricks you into believing something that is amazing, that's great.
It's really good news how gullible our brains are.
It almost always comes true. And it has for me too. And it almost sounds like it can't be true, but it is. I'm telling you, it is. So what was I want to get into Wieden. What was that first meeting with Dan like?
So I went the rounds, met with all the CDs, and my second to last interview was Jim Riswold, and he just like he insisted on meeting me. I actually had to wait around for actually he was my last interview. I had already been offered the job. I had talked to everybody. Everyone was super nice, way more down to earth. I had imagined Wieden being like just this untouchable group of people that were way so much cooler than me.
Yeah, like the Jedi Council or something.
Almost like the Jedi Council of like hipsters is what I imagine. Like, and I just
okay.
I thought I'm not going to be cool enough to even hang out with these people.
Yeah,
but they were. That was a big surprise. They were so nice and so down to earth, and everyone was so humble and cool, and nobody acted like they had anything figured out. And then the last person I met with was Dan, and he was the same way, just like super nice and super kind of approachable. And he told me how much he loved my book, and he offered me the job. And anyway, he was great. And I was just sort of like amazed that this had happened. And
did you tell him that Tim Hanrahan had been like coaching you, and you'd been going back and forth for how long was it? Months, years?
It was probably like a year and a half.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I got into that with him, but and he offered me the job, and then I had to tell him that my daughter, my oldest daughter, my only daughter at that time, she actually had just had a bone marrow transplant.
Oh, wow.
She had leukemia when she was a baby, and she still was a baby. She was like a year and a half and had just had a bone marrow transplant. So we couldn't go anywhere. We had to stay near the hospital for like 3 more months or something like that. So I had to tell him, like, of course I'd take the job, but I'm not gonna be able to come until January. And he just couldn't have been sweeter and more understanding about that. It was like, of course, whenever, if it's 6 months, whatever, take care of your daughter and waiting for you. And so that was amazing. And then they told me, like, can you wait around for 3 hours? Because Jim Riswold's getting back from the airport and he wants to talk to you. And so I waited, and, Jim Riswold, a legend, advertising Hall of Fame, so many amazing Nike, campaigns.
Yeah.
And I waited, and it was less of an interview. It was just 30 minutes of Jim Riswold berating me and making fun of me, and sort of just, if you know Jim, you'd know what I was talking about, but just sort of like tearing me apart in funny ways, kind of hazing me, I guess. And I was like, what is this? What's happening? And I kind of rolled with it, and I'm a terrible trash talker. So I wasn't very good at like giving it back to
You're
him.
a big dummy too.
You're stupid. Also, um, and I just sort of laughed, and I think he just wanted to see if I could take it and if I would have a sense of humor about it or something. And at the end of mocking me and just ripping on me for 30 minutes, he was like, I like you. Yeah, you're going to do well here. I was like, what just happened? But
wow.
That was it. So that was the interview thing. And then when I got there, again, I just major imposter syndrome. I literally thought they'll probably discover that I don't have what it takes within a few weeks, and I will be escorted from the building in about 30 days. As soon as I get on a couple briefs and they see that I can't cut it. And so I think that's, natural. And so many people feel that way. And I certainly felt that way.
It's good. It scares you into working harder and trying and pushing a little bit further than maybe you would.
For sure. So, I also had this idea like, oh, this place is crazy. I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I'm this conservative boy. And I had heard stories about Wieden. And the very first day I was there, I was talking to a couple of guys, and they're like, hey, do you want to go out? You want to go have a smoke? I'm like, well, I don't smoke, but I'll go with you. And I thought they were going outside to have a cigarette. Yeah. And they just went over to a window, opened the window, and lit up a joint, started smoking. Yeah. Smoking weed in the office. And I was like, yeah, this is what I thought. This is what I heard Wieden was like. And this was like 18 years ago before. Yeah. It
was illegal. It was illicit.
Yes. So there were a lot of crazy stories back then. Crazy things happened, and it's all very eye-opening for this innocent boy. Yeah. But it was great. I learned so much being around so many people that were different from me, that were interesting, and it's another thing I love about this industry is the people that you get to know and get to be around, and it changed my view of the world. And
how so? How did it change your view of the world?
Just meeting different, such a wide variety of different people from all over the world that live different lives than I live. And I just thought that was fascinating, and it just gave me a better perspective and greater empathy for all different types of people. And they probably hadn't met anybody like me either. So it was like, I was kind of an oddity. I was like the only guy that didn't drink or swear or do drugs. And so they thought I was a funny mascot to have around too. But I just loved being around so many different types of people, but we were all kind of united under one mission of trying to make the best work of our lives. And so it was like a team. I think like any great sports team, you have all these different types of people, but you become bonded because you have such a unified goal and a mission.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff did you work on there when you first got there?
I think Powerade. I was put on Powerade, and pretty quickly I was a moviephone.com thing came in.
Moviephone.com.
And that was like a pitch situation. And I remember one of the teams I was competing with was Roger Camp and somebody. Right. And I was also on some electronic arts stuff where Roger was my CD. And I have tons of Roger Camp stories. We're still close to this day. But he was a legend, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was competing against him as a creative team. And actually, me and Tim Hanrahan were a team. So this
Oh, wow. That's so
mentor,
cool.
we're partnered up together, and they actually bought our campaign. And so that was pretty amazing and kind of a confidence builder that I was like, we beat Roger Camp.
Yeah.
And because I admired him so much. And so we filmed that campaign with Jared Hess, who had just done Napoleon Dynamite. In fact, Napoleon Dynamite hadn't even gone to theaters yet.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. And I was on Powerade, and then I ran into Hal Curtis in the hall, and he was like, he had seen my book or something. He's like, "Hey, do you want to work on a Nike brief?" And I was like, first of all, of course I said yes.
Yeah.
But secretly I was like so terrified of that, the pressure of that, and kind of didn't want to say yes because I was just so scared. And it was him and Mike Byrne were the CDs on Nike at that time. So one thing, I basically didn't say no to any briefs. I was sometimes I was working on 5 briefs at the same time because it was like the land of plenty, you know, from where I was coming from, like, these were incredible opportunities. I didn't want to say no to any of them. So I was working like constantly, late at night, because I didn't want to let any of these opportunities go. And they were just, everyone was so great there. The CDs, when you're working with great CDs and with great partners, you're going to up your game, and they're going to help you up your game. And you're still going to have to deliver because you're usually competing against other teams as well. But Hal and Mike, you know, were so patient and helpful on my first Nike brief, and I ended up making a Nike spot. So my first year, I was really lucky. I got quite a bit of work produced.
Oh, wow.
Straight out of the gate, and some pretty decent work. And I worked really hard, but I was also surrounded by such amazing talent that, you know, kind of did everything they could to help me succeed.
And did you grow up inside of Wieden? A lot of times it's hard to go from, you know, the new kid who doesn't smoke drugs and just have that be you're the pigeonholed, like the new, you know, weird kid that came from somewhere else. And then turn into sometimes you have to like leave and then come back to move up in the ranks. Were you able to become more of like a leader there over the years, or is it not like that at Wieden, where you just like everybody just kind of, because you said Roger Camp was leading things and working on?
It's a fairly flat organization for sure. We don't. It's just like creative CD, 2 ECDs.
Right.
That's the hierarchy. And I'm sure it's similar to other places in that sometimes you're not appreciated until you leave. I was lucky. Again, I kind of had this, what do you call it? I guess this inferiority complex. I think it was a mix. I think I had a mixture, I probably still do, of equal parts bravado and overconfidence mixed with extreme insecurity.
Right.
And so I had the goal of being hired at Wieden, but then kind of thought that would never happen.
Yeah.
Once I was there, and even after producing some good work and kind of getting on a roll, it never crossed my mind that I would ever be a creative director at Wieden Kennedy. I just thought there's too few of those.
Yeah.
That's not in the cards for me. Yeah. I'll probably have to leave and be a creative director somewhere else whenever that time comes. And I wasn't even really thinking about it. And I really like to tell young creatives, or even mid-level creatives, one of the worst things you can do is focus too much on trying to become a creative director.
Yeah.
Just keep your head down and do great work, and that opportunity will come naturally.
Yeah.
And sometimes the worst thing you can do is try to force it to happen and try to want it to happen, because then you're losing your focus. It's going to take all the focus you've got to make great work.
Yeah.
And if you're distracted by politics and like trying to work the system and trying to become a creative director before you've really got the portfolio and you've got the experience, because if you rush into that, I love the story. I love what Dan Lucy said about how he turned down the first on this podcast.
Yeah.
He turned down that opportunity because he didn't feel like he had produced the work that he wanted to, even though he had done great work at that point.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, that's the sign of a great creative right there.
Yeah.
Because you got to be focused on, like, before that happens, you need to have a phenomenal body of work. Otherwise, the creatives work under you, they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to respect you. Like, they have to feel that you know what you're talking about and that you have something to offer them. And if you're trying to creative direct people that have a way better portfolio than you and way more experience than you, good luck.
Yeah.
You're going to be in trouble.
It's bad when that happens.
And so,
because you always get found out. There's another level of imposter syndrome where you think you're always going to be judged by the people above you, but you end up getting judged by the people that are working for you, because you gotta show the goods and you gotta have that.
Yeah, and also, what's cooler, being LeBron James coach or being LeBron James? Being LeBron James is way cooler. And that's
Well, there's a lot of coaches that played and they were great when they played, and now we see them as old men on the court, and you don't remember that guy used to be amazing, and now he's just yelling and pointing.
And so, like, you have your whole life to be LeBron James coach.
Yeah.
Make the most of being LeBron James. Like, play on that stage for as long as you can, and like win a bunch of championships, and like leave it all on the court, metaphorically speaking, and then become the coach.
Or don't become the coach. Do Michael Jordan's thing and just go golfing every day and smoke cigars.
a lot of people are going to be miserable in a CD job, and you don't need to feel like you have to do that. You can make great money and have a great life.
Yeah.
Just being an amazing creative your whole life if you want to. But so I was surprised when Mark Fitzoff got promoted. I was working on Old Spice as a copywriter. And when he pulled me in and said, I want to give you, I want you to take my position as CD. That just came out of left field, because I was not expecting to ever be a CD at Wieden Kennedy. And nor was I expecting to ever be an ECD at Wieden Kennedy. But so that's kind of how that happened. And in terms of, did I have to leave? I did leave, actually.
You left for 8 months, right?
I went to Deutsch LA as CCO there, and then like 6 months into that, Colleen DeCourcy called me and said, "Hey, we want to come back and run the Portland office." And I think my first response was, "Could you have had this idea 6 months ago?"
This is going to be awkward.
Going to be awkward. Yeah. So it was it was a unfortunately short time, and it wasn't because I wasn't having a blast and having a great experience at Deutsch LA with an amazing fun. I really had a good time in Deutsch LA and was enjoying my time there, but couldn't say no to that opportunity.
Yeah. How do you tell that? How do you tell those Deutsch LA people, I got to go back home? I got to go back to the place where,
Pete Favad is awesome, and he and I are good friends, and he understood. I think it was unfortunate timing, but they were actually really cool about it. And I think they understood that was sort of my home, and that was an opportunity that was going to be tough for me to pass up.
But now you're coaching, you said, and you're freelancing. You're working all over the place now.
Yeah, freelancing. And a week and a half ago, I launched the Audacious School of Astonishing Pursuits, which is my coaching and mentor program. My first program is called Creative Megamachine, and it's like you. I think I've just seen in the past few years, there's always been a great need for mentorship, but
yeah,
I feel like recently there's really a desperate need for it. I really think we're kind of failing the new generation. They're not getting the coaching and mentoring that they need, and why I love what you guys are doing at Ad House, because I think there's just a real need for that, for like really good senior mentors to kind of take in younger creatives, or even senior creatives that still want to just continue their education.
Right.
If you look at any other industry, accounting, law, anything, there's like an almost unlimited amount of professional development that you can get after you're in the industry. You look at advertising, there's almost nothing. Like we have the ultimate sort of sink or swim training policy, where it's basically, our policy is just neglect. We hire people and they just got to just figure it out. And I think there's probably always been a need for more mentorship and coaching, but I think especially the newer generation of talent, they kind of expect it, and they really want it. And they're getting very frustrated and discouraged, and a lot of them are dropping out of the industry because they want to see personal growth, and they're just not getting what they need. And it's partially because of what's happened to the industry, where clients are more and more demanding. They're paying less money or more work under shorter timelines. And creative leaders in every discipline, actually, they just don't have the time that they used to have for mentoring and for really like spending a lot of time. They're barely keeping their head above water. And so that's those are some of the reasons why I launched the coaching and mentor platform. And
where do we find this? Where can people go to check that out?
schoolofastonishingpursuits.com, or they can, that's the best place to learn everything. They can also follow the Instagram channel at the School of Astonishing Pursuits.
All right, I'm gonna go follow that right now.
And it's really for working professionals, so it's not a portfolio school. I think at Ad House you can go and actually kind of work on your portfolio and get new pieces. This is really made for people that are already working, that are really busy, and it's just teaching them the secrets and techniques of the world's best creatives that they can put into practice right away on the briefs they're already working on. So
I love it so much. And there's plenty of room for more portfolio schools. So we're big fans of all of them. The Denver one and the Miami one and all of them.
They're all great, and
they're all great.
I wish I would have had the opportunity to go to a more professional type of cool portfolio school. But I think it's a great jump start to your career.
And people can reach you there too at the School of Astonishing Pursuits.
They can.
If they wanted to email you.
My email is kind of at the bottom of the page, but they can also just email me at jasonbagley@mac.com.
Okay. So I'll put all these in the show notes when I make that, and people can reach out and ask you for advice, or maybe they could send you their portfolio the way you sent yours to Tim.
Yes.
And you can tell them, go back and do it over.
Yes.
Until they get it right. But this has been great, man. Thank you for chatting with me. And
thanks for having me.
And
Tom.
It was really great to meet you. Jason Bagley, what a guy. Head over to schoolofastonishingpursuits.com to learn more about his 8-week mentoring program. Whether you're new to this business or have been at it for as long as me, there's always more to learn. This has been the A-List, sponsored by AdHouse Advertising School. And speaking of learning, we got new Zoom classes up at adhousenyc.com. They start week after Super Bowl. You get 10 weeks for just $6.99. Can I say Super Bowl? Am I going to get sued? I'm Tom Christmann. You can find me at tomchrismann.net. Thanks for listening. Please rate and subscribe to the A-List wherever you listen to podcasts. And thanks to Ross Hotman over at Duotone Audio Group for the music. Get vaccinated if you haven't. Wear a mask. See you soon. Thanks.